Quick warning, subject matter in this video may be considered sensitive to some viewers, and as always, viewer discretion is advised. And if you have a story you want to send my way, well, look at the screen now because it says what to do. And thank you. I had been babysitting since I was 14. My parents were divorced, and my dad wouldn't be home for a few more hours after we got home from school. So, since I was the oldest of 3 kids, I often watched my younger siblings. After 2 years of this, and my parents both agreeing that I was responsible enough, I decided to start offering to babysit for others as a way to make my own income, and I loved it. Thanks to my parents primarily being my walking advertising, my mom had actually suggested I watch one of her coworkers' kids, Noah. They had recently moved from a couple of cities over, and the mother worked with my mom and the father worked elsewhere. But since their schedules overlapped, they needed someone there until they got home. They had a babysitter previously, but of course, you can't take your babysitter with you. And they said that it would be for at least a few months until the mom could get her schedule changed. And they also told me he was well-mannered and assured me that he would be easy to handle. So, I agreed. I believe it was April when I started watching Noah. They actually lived close enough to the high school that I could just ride my bike there. I arrived at their place, and the mom was still at work, but the dad greeted me at the door. He gave me a bit of a rundown, some do's and don'ts, said he would leave some money so we could order pizza for dinner, and then introduced me to Noah. When he came out, he seemed a bit shy and standoffish at first, but I could tell that wasn't who he normally was. So, after the dad left, I found Noah still standing in the hall and staring at me as I shut the door behind his dad. I walked up to him, smiling, and I kneeled down in front of him to introduce myself. He smiled and told me his name, and then asked if I wanted to see his toys. After about an hour or so, I asked him about dinner and if he wanted pizza, to which he was very excited about. So, we went downstairs, I ordered the pizza, and he watched some TV while I did my homework. Occasionally, while it was playing commercials, he would ask me if he could ask a question or say something. I thought it was cute and funny that this kid was asking, rather than just standing above me and asking whatever was on his mind. So, I chuckled, and I told him that he didn't have to ask first. He just smiled and continued to watch TV. Pizza showed up shortly after. I paid them and brought the pizza into the kitchen, and I noticed that Noah was still sitting in the living room. Usually the kids come running in, so it was a nice difference to get to serve it before they snatched it from me. I put a slice on the plate and I called for him when he slowly came walking in the room. I asked him if he wanted 1 or 2 slices, and he said 1 and sat down as I brought him his plate. He ate the 1 piece, and I'd brought my packet into the kitchen and was highlighting as I ate my 2 slices, and I noticed that once again he was just watching me. I asked him if he wanted more, and he seemed surprised, or like he didn't know how to respond. I asked if he was okay, and he again quietly asked if he could. Curious, I just got up and got him another piece and a breadstick. He seemed really excited about getting more, so again, I just chalked it up to him being too shy to ask. Now, afterwards, part of me then thought maybe his parents have a thing about getting 1 plate or not eating too much, so I let him have 1 more slice and breadstick and told him, let's wait before we eat more, so we didn't upset our stomach. And he then apologized for eating. Again, I know they told me he was very well mannered, but I thought this was just silly. So I chuckled some and told him he didn't have to apologize. The rest of the night went fine. I had him get ready for bed and he fell asleep in his room playing. When his mom got home, I explained how it all went and asked if he was only allowed to eat so much, or if there were any rules for dinner, and she explained no. She also said that she noticed that he started asking for seconds since he started being babysat. We both thought that maybe it was just something the previous babysitter did and made them do it and just left it at that. So I did the same. I watched Noah for a few more days, and it seemed like a fairly normal routine. Him asking permission for just about everything, even to go to the bathroom, but again, I just thought it was this kid's personality. Until this one night. I had a project for school that involved making a collage of sorts, and I thought it would be fun to bring the supplies with me so Noah could let out his creative side. I was definitely right, too. He seemed to be having a blast coloring and gluing stuff. He said he was going to make a card for his parents. One thing I forgot to bring was scissors, and I made a comment about it aloud, to which Noah quickly jumped up saying they had some and that he would grab them. I quickly tried to get up and follow him when he started grabbing them, and I stopped him to say that I would get them, as they weren't safety or craft scissors, and it was unsafe, and then he immediately dropped them on the ground and started crying, saying he was sorry. He immediately walked past me and did the weirdest thing. He started removing the couch cushions and laid on the couch, face down, crying. At first I thought maybe this was just his weird way of throwing a tantrum, so I just went and rubbed his back and tried to calm him down. I told him it was okay, and that he should sit on the couch with the cushions. He looked at me confused at first. He slowly put the cushions back, sat on the couch, and wiped his face again, then apologized for crying. And again, I told him it was okay. He wasn't even remotely in trouble, and I made him some chocolate milk to calm him down. We went back to normal after that, and again, I brought it up to his mom. She chuckled and once more said that he had done that a few times when he got in trouble, but she never understood why. So they told me that I could just tell him not to tear the couch apart and he'll be fine. Again, I thought the parents knew best and just let it go, but I still did think that was weird. I noticed a few more things like those as time went on. Noah was extremely excited to see me, to the point that he would hug me when I arrived, and would try to rush his parents out the door. Then, we would carry on as usual until something would come up. I made spaghetti one night, and he asked to carry his bowl from the counter to the table, and I allowed it. He, unfortunately, tripped, though, dropping the plate and breaking it. He immediately stood up and started bawling and apologizing. I think I scared him too because it splashed on me and I let out a little yelp. I tried to calm him down when he immediately went back to the couch. While trying to clean up the broken bowl, I noticed this and walked into the living room to tell him that he didn't need to do this, and that's when I noticed that he had peed himself. I asked him what was wrong when I noticed that he looked terrified. I walked up to him, not knowing really what to do, when he flinched. So I backed off, kneeling on the floor, and I just told him it's okay. He wasn't in trouble, and I was not mad at him. I suggested he go ahead and clean himself up, and that I would clean up the mess so he could eat when he got back. It must have been half an hour or so since this happened, and he hadn't come back down, so I went upstairs looking for him. I saw the bathroom was empty with his clothes lying on the floor, but no Noah. I went to his bedroom, and I didn't see him at first until I noticed his mattress looked uneven. And that's when I saw him lying under it, like he did the couch. I calmly asked him to come out as he was not in trouble, and that his dinner was getting cold. After a few minutes, I finally got him to come out and have his dinner. While eating dinner, the thought was eating at me, and I finally asked him about the bed and the couch thing. He said when he gets in trouble or has an accident, he has to be put in timeout. So I told him I had never put him in timeout, and he agreed, but said that he had been before. But then he said he's glad that I didn't sit on him, though. I asked him what he meant by that, and he shyly explained that she would sit on him while he was under the couch cushions or bed. I didn't know how to respond, so I just told him that I would never do that and that he had never been in trouble with me. He eased up some throughout the night, but that was digging at me like, who could he have meant by that? Who does that? Was he talking about his mother? I held on to this information longer than I should have, but I was worried with where to go with it. I thought that maybe I could get more information out of him the next week I watched him, but I ended up not seeing him for about a week as his dad had taken some time off. However, when I went back, he seemed incredibly excited to see me. Just looking him over, I didn't see any marks on him though. Right before his dad left, I asked him without Noah in the room, asking what he suggested if he was too rowdy or not obeying, claiming I didn't want to overstep my bounds. The dad was curious at first and asked if I had any issues with him. I didn't, but I told him that it was something I always wanted to check with the parents. He said he never really thought about it since they've never really had to do anything, and just said that I could send him to his room and left it at that. He seemed genuinely surprised by the questions, so I was at a loss. That night, we started playing a video game, and I tried to be competitive but fair, and as he started losing, he shouted out a cuss word. Now, when kids do this and they immediately freeze like they realized, I kind of find it hilarious. So when I turned to look at him and just gave the normal, "Hey, let's not say that, buddy," he was in instant tears. And before I could react to that, he took off into the kitchen. I got up to follow him and immediately saw him with his hand in a drawer crying. I asked him what he was doing, and he said he was waiting for me to drawer jam? Again, I asked him to clarify, and he explained that she would smash his hand in the drawer for saying bad words. I took his hand from the drawer and I held it, and I told him that was not okay and that I would never do that. This kid was terrified, and I didn't know what to do because his parents did not seem like the type to hurt him. I asked him if he had other forms of punishment, and he explained that if he talked back when he wasn't supposed to or wasn't allowed to talk, he would be locked in the deep freeze. He told me about a few other things, like not getting to eat dinner because he wouldn't do as he was told. And I told him that those are not nice things to do. And I finally asked him who was doing this. But he wouldn't tell me. It was always just, she did it. That night, I had to try to sleep with that in my 16 to 17-year-old mind. I took a chance and I asked my mom about it. I thought I was being sly by saying it was a kid that I sat, and he told me this info and I didn't know what to do with it. She told me that she would help with getting the right numbers to report it, and to try to keep a record of everything I was told, to which I did. She wasn't dumb, though, and she figured out who I was talking about. I told her that Noah hadn't specified it was his parents, though, so she said that she would do what she needed and let me know, but to not say anything to his parents just yet, just in case. The next night, I watched Noah again, and he was his happy self again. I tried to keep things as light and happy as possible, thinking maybe he might let something slip. This time, I had my dad bring me over, though, because I brought stuff to make cookies. He was having a blast with making them and decorating. And that's exactly what we needed for multiple reasons. I let him have 3 cookies, and he said that I was the best babysitter ever, and that I was much better than the last one. I teased at first, asking if it was because they only let him have 1 cookie, and he said it was because I was nicer. I tried to say something like everyone has their own rules, or something to that effect, when it finally hit me. He said something about at least he was a better kid now for me because of her. It was the previous babysitter. So, trying not to show it, I continued cleaning up and asked if it was the babysitter that punished him, and he confirmed it. It was so hard to not immediately scream. I was so happy that it wasn't his parents, but I was enraged that another babysitter would do this. While he was watching a movie, I snuck into the kitchen to call my mom and told her everything, and she told me to tell his mom when she got there. The rest of the night, it went fine, thinking of how to explain this to them, but it was a lot easier when she did get home. She put Noah to bed, and I told her everything that had happened. She was shocked, and crying and apologizing to me for him. I couldn't imagine at that time how you could explain to your own kid that what he experienced was not okay. She did explain that she noticed some changes in him when she started watching him, but just thought it was him. I was asked to be a witness since Noah told me the info, in order for them to try to press charges on her, and thankfully she was charged with abuse. Sadly, Noah was not the only kid she was watching, but I have no idea if anyone else ever spoke up. I do hope so. People like that piss me off, and it makes me glad that I now work in a daycare to show that we're not all creepy, bad people. But until then, Melissa, you better hope we never meet, because it will not be pleasant. This happened to me back when I was a freshman in high school. I was 14 at the time, and it was right around Halloween. I babysat for a family in our neighborhood, which, during the time, was in a newly developing neighborhood, meaning new houses were being built around the area, and there were still lots of empty lots and fields owned by farmers in the surrounding area. This particular house that I babysat for sat in front of an empty field. This house was gorgeous, but it had huge bay windows in the living room, and at night, you couldn't see anything outside if all the lights in the house were on. So, on this particular night that I was babysitting, I had just put the 2 kids to bed around 8:30, 9-ish, and I was heading downstairs to the living room to watch TV. The parents were not due home until well after midnight, so I had quite a bit of time left. I used their landline to call a few friends, because at the time, cell phones were not as common, and smartphones were not even in existence. I remember I was sitting in the kitchen at the snack bar while on the phone with my boyfriend at the time, and I'd happened to glance outside the porch door. I thought I saw a flash of moving light running across the field beyond the backyard, but since the lights in the kitchen were on, it was hard to see if anyone was standing out there. I mentioned this to my boyfriend, and he just sort of teased me, saying every girl in every horror movie always says she thinks she sees something outside right before being a victim. I clicked on the porch lights, and I didn't see any more light or movement, so I assumed it was just my imagination, and went on with my evening. About 2 or 3 hours later, I'm sitting in the living room with all the lights in the house turned off, and watching TV in the living room again. The TV was placed in front of the large bay window, and I remember I was starting to feel pretty tired. As I was beginning to sort of zone out, my eyes drifted toward the backyard, and I again thought I saw something move. I blinked a few times and squinted my eyes, and realized I was looking at a masked face staring up at me from the backyard. I froze, still stuck in between wondering if I was imagining this, or if I was actually seeing a person staring at me from the backyard. I slowly stood up and went upstairs to the parents' master bedroom, since the window in that room overlooked the entire backyard and the fields behind it. I carefully pulled aside a corner of the curtain and peered outside. To my horrific realization, there was, indeed, a person standing right between the backyard and the field right behind it. The person had on, and I kid you not, a freaking potato sack mask. I wish that I could tell you that I was quick to get on the phone with the police and grab a weapon and lock myself and the kids in one of the bedrooms, but I was honestly just standing there, frozen in fear. As someone who always loved and watched tons of horror movies, you always think you'll be prepared to handle any situation that happens to you in real life. But here I was, just frozen and scared out of my mind. Finally, I snap myself out of my trance and think, how do I make sure the kids and I get help out here? I picked up the cordless phone next to the bed, and I dialed the police. The dispatch asked me if the doors and windows of the house were locked up, to which I confirmed yes, as I always ensured we locked up after coming in from playing outside earlier that day. The dispatch told me that the responding officer would be there in less than 10 minutes. She told me to stay on the line with her and get the 2 kids into the room with me and lock the door. Clutching the phone to my chest, I quietly tiptoe out of the bedroom and go into the bedroom of the 2 kids, who shared a bedroom. They both tiredly but willingly cooperated. I told them we were going to all sleep in their parents' bedroom for the night. Fortunately, they were too tired to ask any further questions, and followed me to their parents' room. Once we were in there, I locked the door and told the dispatch that we were safely in a locked room. I got the kids into the bed, and quickly went back to the window to see if the person was still standing in the backyard. To my surprise, he wasn't standing there anymore. This scared me even more, as I knew he could be anywhere or trying to break into the house. My heart skipped a beat when I heard a loud thudding noise downstairs. It sounded like something heavy was thrown against the back door. I told the dispatch what I had heard, and she said the units were just about a minute away. Trying to hold back tears, I continued to stay on the main line with her, all while trying to maintain my composure so as to not scare two kids. Finally, the dispatch told me that the police had arrived, and it was okay for me to let them inside. I went downstairs and I could see the flashing lights of the squad cars. I unlocked the door, and two officers entered the house. They had me phone the parents to inform them of what had happened. While the police searched the house, another officer arrived and sat upstairs with the kids and me while I called their parents, who were, fortunately, already almost home and were beyond horrified at this news. The police did not find anyone on the property, but what they did find still chills me to this day. As they opened the door to the backyard, they found a huge hunting knife sticking right in the door. I'm guessing that is what had caused the loud thud that I had heard earlier while hiding in the upstairs bedroom. There was no blood or note, just a large knife sticking out of the door. As far as I know, the person was never caught, but there had been reports from other people in the surrounding neighborhoods of the same person wearing that mask and standing in the backyard of other people's houses. The scariest part is that all of these reports were coming from people who were babysitting at the time. So, for a while, there was a big scare in the community that someone was stalking babysitters and threatening their safety. Since the person was never caught, my parents had me quit babysitting for some time until either this person was caught or more information was released on the situation. Eventually, the reportings of sightings of this man had stopped after a few weeks. But, to my knowledge, the house I was at was the only one who actually had a weapon thrown at the door. Nobody knows if it was just someone playing a prank, or if this was a sick and twisted person intending to do much worse. I babysat for most of my teenage years. I still occasionally do it for people I'm close with and that I know, but it was one of the easiest ways to make money, in my opinion. However, there are some weird people out there, adults and kids alike, which, after a while, gets tiring to deal with. There were definitely a few that I remember that really stood out, but one specifically that I would like to share with you now. Now, this happened quite some time ago, back when Craigslist was popular, and you didn't have to worry about being kidnapped or robbed. I used to post my babysitting services there. I got a response from someone to watch their kids that lived a few blocks over. They called, and we set up a time to meet and basically interview each other. When I went over there, the house was kind of a mess. From boxes everywhere, carpet being ripped up, the walls painted, just things like that. And they said they were renovating because it used to belong to the dad's parents. His mother passed away and his dad was in a nursing home, so they got the house, or something like that, and they were trying to make it a bit more modern. That being said, they thought they would save some money by getting a babysitter instead of a daycare. That was fine by me. They basically set up the back living room and the bedrooms, so we had places to be in the home that were safe. Sometimes I watched their son Caleb while they were away. Sometimes they asked me to watch him while they were getting supplies delivered, having appliances put in, etc. Caleb was around 5, I believe, when I started. He was talking a lot, but still had trouble making full sentences. Caleb's room was the second room in the hallway, right after the bathroom, so they had a baby monitor in his room still, so That way I could sit in the living room and watch TV or something if he was playing. I could hear him mumble to himself and play randomly at times, but one time, I started hearing him get really into a conversation. I first just thought it was that he was deep into playing with his toys or something, and I let it go. Then I heard him laugh and talk again, so I started to listen closer. I heard him start talking about himself. He said, "I'm 5, I like chips, I like purple, Daddy made it," just little things like that, but I never heard him say something on the other side of the conversation. Curious, I went to his room to see what was going on. I saw him sitting on the floor lining up all his toys, and he continued to talk as he looked over in the corner of his room, which kind of worried me, so I went all the way in. I asked him what was going on, and he said he was playing with his friend. I questioned about his friend, and he said the wet man. I thought I misheard him at first and asked him maybe the white man, and he corrected me again, saying, no, the wet man. It was weird, but I asked why he was wet, and he said he didn't know, but he thought it was funny because he still had his clothes on. I was a little weirded out by this, so I decided to ask Caleb to watch a movie in the living room with me, and he did. This actually occurred a few more times, but was making me more and more curious as to who he was talking about or seeing. I thought his parents seemed to be pretty cool, so I asked them if they believed in ghosts one time while we were eating. The dad laughed and didn't really answer, but the mom said she believed they existed but never experienced anything. And then I told them about Caleb's friend. While the mom thought it was interesting, the dad actually lost all color and got quiet. I kinda thought he was mad at me at first and quickly started apologizing when he said it was fine. I remember they looked at each other, and the dad said, "Clyde," and then the mom's face matched his. Then they told me about how his great-grandfather had a heart attack in the bath and had drowned in it. He showed me a picture of him and everything. It was kind of creepy. Was this kid seeing his dead great-great-grandfather then? In case anyone was curious, I continued to babysat him for a few more years and got pretty close to the family, and the mom freaked out one time when I came over saying they were going through pictures and they showed one of Clyde, and he stopped and exclaimed, "Hey, that's the wet man." So, yep, he definitely saw him. The visits from Clyde stopped happening after a while from what I've witnessed, and what they've told me, he doesn't really remember it either. It's definitely one of the most memorable babysitting experiences that I have had. So this was a collection of babysitting stories. A lot of stories in there. 3. There wasn't really a lot. What am I saying? The stories in here had a lot of terrifying aspects to them. All of them... I can't talk today, guys. I'm just struggling with all my words all together. It is just... I'm just a bumbling idiot today. Anyways, thank you to everyone who submitted these stories to me. Always appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who lets me use their stories. A huge thank you to everyone who listened to this video or watched the video and got to this point. If you got to this point, thank you so very much. I hope you're having a beautiful day. And if you liked the video, please consider hitting that thumbs up button. You can also subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you're not new or already subscribed, I just want to say thank you for being so. And yeah, if you want to support the channel further, $1 a month, Patreon, channel memberships, other stuff. If you go the higher tiers, you know how it goes. Early access, all that good jazz. There I go talking about jazz again. Anyways, I hope you all have a great day and a wonderful weekend. I will see you on the next video. I'm going to stop talking because I am struggling. But until the next video, my friends, sleep well.